Every single year, cruise ships dump 14 billion pounds of garbage into the oceans. r/AskReddit. What fact is ignored generously? Experience is not equal to competence. Prevention is more affordable than treatment. Dubiously related. Every time the medical field finds a way to treat a condition, it just opens up the road to a harder to treat, more expensive condition. Yup, like condoms are cheaper than Plan B. Plan B is a bit cheaper than raising a kid for 19 years and possibly paying for their college and staying in and not even getting laid is cheaper than all of those. That we all have confirmation bias. In my studies I found that I do not. Oh wait, I controlled for my confirmation bias. Turns out I have the smallest confirmation bias. No one has a smaller confirmation bias than I do in the entire academia, and people come up to me and tell me I'm the most objective researcher and I write papers with the most logical conclusions and most rigorous models. No bias, they have the bias. But I have no bias. My bias level is tremendously non-existent. Duck me, I read that in his voice. Just because a movie or a book is good doesn't mean you like it. That's a good way to put it. You can appreciate that something is well written, good at engaging its target audience, etc. without actually liking the work yourself. Lack of understanding this is a big reason why most kids movies have like a 5 out of 10 rating. The adult reviewers don't like the lack of depth and think the movie is garbage because of it, or whatever author reason they may have, even if it's perfectly fine for the kids it's made for. Humans overestimate what they can do in a day and underestimate what we can achieve in a year. Just because it's legally allowed doesn't mean you're not a douchebag for doing it. Example, free speech isn't freedom from consequence. You legally can say, "Nah, whatever you want." Doesn't mean people won't call you a peen for it. I love freedom of speech and support everyone exercising their right, because it lets me know exactly where the assholes are. Therefore, I can avoid them. Mob mentality doesn't mean you are right. This needs to be higher. Will solve 85% of the world's problems. Sure. Mob mentality doesn't mean you are wrong either. Ultimately the issue is, mob mentality takes out critical thinking for the vast majority of participants, so it really depends on how rational the leading voice is. No, a group of people believing something doesn't mean it's correct or incorrect. That was the point. Mob mentality is feeling emboldened in stupid thoughts and decisions, no matter the validity of them, among other things. The number of people who die after a war to consequences of war, hunger, disease, etc. are not counted in the statistics. Talking for France here. Some people who died between the 9th and the 11th of November 1918 were not counted as dead these days. Because that would be quite awful for a family to learn that your husband/brother/son/father died the last day before the war stopped. You think that's bad? In the War of 1812, there was an entire battle in New Orleans a couple weeks after the Treaty of Ghent was signed, because word hadn't gotten back to the US yet that the war was over. Over 2,000 people died. Oops. Human memory is extremely unreliable. We forget important details. We fabricate memories and convince ourselves that they're true. What we do remember is distorted to conform to our biases. When I was 5, my parents surprised my older sister and I with a trip to Disneyland really early in the morning before our flight. 4 years I had this memory of it happening and being so excited. They videotaped the whole thing, but we had lost the video for years. When we found it, I saw that I was actually asleep the whole time. I had completely made up the memory based on my sister and parents talking about it. Yeah, this is especially crazy to me. You can fabricate memories off of talking and thinking about it. Sometimes when you think about things like that long enough you can forget they aren't real. This is why witness testimony is extremely unreliable. True, witness testimony is only really good if a lot of witnesses all report seeing the same thing. And even then, it's unreliable because of things like mob mentality. It also depends on what the person or persons witnessed. A person testifying that they saw a Jeep crash into a storefront is going to be much more reliable than a person testifying that the necktie worn by the driver was green. That just because someone tells you something is a fact doesn't mean that it is. Make sure to do your research. I'll take your word for it. But how else am I going to write my essay on the surge of disinformation? Just because some people are naturally talented doesn't mean you shouldn't work hard. Hard work can beat talent when talent doesn't work hard, as my undergrad advisor was fond of saying. But when talent works hard, it's game over. The importance of getting 7 through 9 hours of sleep every single night. To add to this, 7 through 9 hours of sleep is not the same as a 7 through 9 hour sleep opportunity window. If you're giving yourself a 7-hour sleep opportunity window, you are not getting 7 hours of sleep. Probably more like 6. Valid point. You are not immune to propaganda. Fun word fact. The term propaganda originally referred to a Catholic Church committee for propagating the faith during the Counter-Reformation. This comment was brought to you by Big Etymology. Actually, propaganda comes from when a British person gets a good look at something. Had to give this poster propaganda before I understood it. Facts aren't opinions. I wish I could upvote this a million times. I'm getting really sick and tired of people who argue 2 points, where one is arguing from evidence-based facts, the other is arguing from a YouTube conspiracy video, and the second tries to take the high road with, you have your opinion, I have mine. No, you ducking window licker. Person A has facts, you have idiocy. Related to this, when it's a subject debated in the media, it's frustrating when media sources/news outlets treat each stance like they have equally valuable evidence backing them up. France didn't stop executing people by guillotine until 1977, and slavery wasn't legally considered a crime against humanity until 2001. It's still going on in the Middle East. How do you think they build all those skyscrapers in Dubai and are still able to afford to deck them out? Oil money can only get you so far, and it has to run out eventually. They lure people from poor areas in with a job offer, then they shove them in a warehouse and give them minimal food and water while they work them to death building their skyscrapers. They tell them they are sending their paychecks to their families, but they never get there. Admitting to a mistake is not a sign of weakness. Bending over backwards to cover it up and pretending like it never happened is. It's in your best interests too. If you don't own your mistakes, others will and may use them against you. Be careful which mistakes you own. Turns out bragging about your restraining orders doesn't get you a second date. Older doesn't always mean wiser. Wisdom is obtained from what you do with your time. It's not about how much time you've had. Just remember, stupid people get old too. Giving birth to a kid doesn't make you an expert on raising them, nor do they owe you for being born. A lot of people need to realize this. Way too many need to. You have blinkers for your car so that you can tell other drivers that you're changing lanes. Fun fact, it's the law, and you need to put them on before you start to move lanes. Exactly. The purpose of a turn signal is to alert those around you what you are going to do so they can be prepared, not what you are actively doing. One of my biggest peeves. Nearly every hand you shake has held a penis, but everyone has touched a vagina. C-section baby here. I have never touched a vagina in my entire life. The government is trying to pass an anti-encryption bill that could strip away any and all privacy given to US citizens. Depending on enforcement, it'd also annihilate the economy of literally any country it was passed in and completely cut it off from all international banking. Animals are much more brutal than people realize. We only see the cute cuddly side on the internet. Cheetah makes friends with a goat, gets more views. The warthog gets eaten alive by lions and lasts a surprisingly long time while it's happening. Animals will eat you alive if they don't think you're a threat to injury. It's out of survival. Something bigger and badder might come along and they won't have eaten anything. No, the leopard didn't kill the animal before eating it out of compassion. It just didn't want to take a hoof to the head while it was having lunch. I watched 3 lionesses hunt a warthog and its piglet up close once. 2 of the lionesses made themselves seen, while the third slid behind a small mound and snuck through the grass. The warthog stayed focused on the 2 lions in the open. The hunter got within a few feet and crouched low, ready to strike. Something alerted the warthogs and they took off like a rocket. The lioness, being the queen of the savannah, rolled on her side and started licking her paw. Hugely disappointing. Just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean I hate you. And conversely, just because I agree with you doesn't mean I like you. Most people over 20 already met a murderer at least once in their lifetime. I dated a murderer before I was even 20. Before he became a murderer, of course. Is this a statistical 6 degrees of separation type thing? How is this determined? I'd imagine it would be a statistical thing where they determine 1. The average number of people a person meets by the age of 20, and 2. How many murderers are in the population. There was a girl named Rennie that was a regular at the gas station I worked at back in '09. She worked at the salon up the road. She was in almost every day. Saw on the news one morning that she put 2 rounds into the chest of her ex-boyfriend. I met this girl when I was 19.